Let me try that again. Perfect. All right, calling to order the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting on Tuesday, September 14th. It is currently 6:51 p.m. and I am Councilwoman Darian Martin. We're going to go ahead. Is that me giving the feedback?
Mine.
Okay, there you go. I'm going to go ahead and forego the solid meditation and pledge because we've already done that, and ask Madam Clerk for the roll call.
Roll call. Roll call. Chair Martin.
Present.
Vice Chair Nickerson.
Present. Vice Chair.
That's what I have.
Present.
Member Urban.
Present.
Member Perella.
Present.
Member Lightfoot Ward. Also present for the record, Janice Jacoby, Village Clerk, Christia Lu, Village Manager, Interim Village Attorney Joseph Geller. And, are you in this meeting? Camila from Placerbia and Michelle from Code Enforcement.
Thank you. We'll move on to subsection D. This is very interesting. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I don't have a note, but I had a question.
What's the question?
I see an agenda on this thing. Did I do something wrong?
Scroll.
Oh, I did.
Do you see section F, the agenda items? There's a second page.
I'm gonna let him do that.
Okay. All right, so while they're figuring that out, I'll go ahead and head to Good and Welfare. If anyone in the audience has anything that they would like to discuss about the upcoming agenda, now would be the first of two opportunities that you'll get. You're limited to 3 minutes, and when you do step up to the podium, it would be great if you would help us out with your name and your address for the record. So with that being said, does anyone have a comment about any of the items on the agenda for tonight? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move along to section F. We have two items, F1 and F2, that I'll ask Camila to come up and kind of guide us through. And then when we move to F3 and F4, I believe the mayor will take the lead on those two items. So let's start off with item number F1, Village of El Portal Water Supply Plan, which I believe in short is a proposed change to the comp plan to update it in accordance with regulations from the Water Management District. So I'll let Camila take it away.
Thank you, Councilperson Martin. Good evening, committee members.
Good evening.
Yes, this item is an amendment to the comprehensive plan, but it was a concurrent effort with the amendments, and the water supply plan will be, if adopted, will be incorporated into a plan as a reference, so as a standalone document. And in here, there's background information on what the water supply plan is. The village is a wholesale customer of Miami-Dade County for its water, but each municipality, per the Florida statutes, section 163.316713, every municipality is required to have a water supply work plan and update it every, in accordance with the South Florida Water Management District's plan that they, based on their amendments. And so I don't believe the village had a water supply plan. So we've worked with the South Florida Water Management District, who has reviewed it. And the plan also uniquely involves the efforts that the village takes on conservation and other items in the comprehensive plan that pertain to the use of water and how to conserve it. So even if the village depends on the county, there are also steps that the village can take individually to help and to be consistent with what the county requires.
Okay, I think that was a great explanation. Just on my end, I love efforts that make sure that no municipality is acting in a silo, and we all have some sort of plan and collective goal that we're working towards. So with that being said, I'll open it up to the council members. Does anyone have a question for Camila on this item?
I have one question. In the remarks, there was an 18-month deadline given. Are we in any, or will there be any penalties assessed or anything to that effect? Because it seemed that we're probably at least 6 months outside of that window.
Yes, we are beyond that window. We were under, when we first started consulting with the South Florida Water Management District, we were under the impression that we could incorporate the county's water supply plan via policy in the comprehensive plan, which is when we were notified that the village should have their own plan, and we were working, and they were aware of our progress, of the village's progress, and what the status was with the plan. So there's no penalty for, in this case. In the future, when they issue theirs, we will have to comply. When they issue their amendments, we'll have to comply with the 18-month window to amend it if need be. Yes.
Is there any schedule or anticipation of how often they would make amendments?
Yes, there is. The last time was 2018.
Okay.
And they issue amendments, I'm sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head right now.
I mean, is it like every 5 years? Is it like every 10 years? I mean, I guess this is a new thing for everybody, kind of?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well, no. It's, for the village moving forward, yes, but it is less, the window is less than the comprehensive plan itself. So this document will likely have to be reviewed with more frequently than the comprehensive plan entirely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess
can-
final question would be, bioswales, as discussed in the Resilient Streets plan, would that, I would imagine, count towards either conservation or reclamation? Is that right?
The plan does include, we can make sure that it does. We can make sure that the plan includes those as efforts that the village is taking
Okay.
to
I feel
conserve
like we're
water.
already doing that just in the way we're talking about the resilient
Yes.
streets, but as long as it's, I'll just say it out loud since it's right there in front of us.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
No, we can. We could make those amendments for council, for the council meeting, yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Are there any other questions or comments for Camila? All right. Do I have a motion to go ahead and, I suppose, what are we doing? Sending this to the council? Yeah. Is that the motion? Okay. Do I have a motion to go ahead and send these amendments to full council so we can discuss that there?
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All righty. Do we do roll?
Okay. Member Lightfoot Ward.
Yes.
Member Perella.
Yes.
Member Urbom.
Yes.
Vice Chair Nickerson.
Yes.
Chair Martin.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes to full council.
Awesome. We'll move to item F2, the new application for zoning procedures. Camila will lead us through that as well.
Yes, thank you. This item came for, I guess it came forward, thank you to village manager and the building official and village clerk. It was a request from the village to incorporate a separate application for zoning processes such as site plan review, variance, and special exception requests, which require a more extensive review time than the site improvements that can be approved by right. And it is important to note that this application is consistent with what the charter says for the planning and zoning procedures. It's simply summarizing them in a more user-friendly way and having a streamlined application for which applicants it can be simpler to apply for any of these requests, because currently there is only the building permit application that isn't really the correct application for any of these processes. Again, those are site plan review, which is for new construction or an addition greater than 50% of the building. Variance, which is for a request to stray from the code or to apply for anything that is not consistent with the code requirements based on a hardship, and special exception, which is for a new use or a change of use, or any new development in Zone 5 east of the tracks.
All right, thank you. So I have a question. I think I'll open it up and then I'll ask my colleagues if they have a question. Currently, are we tracking how long it takes us to process the different types of applications that we have come into the city, the village?
I don't believe so. It varies. It really varies depending on the comments and how long an applicant takes to modify their drawings. And so some have a quick turnaround and some perhaps don't, and they miss the deadline to go into meetings, so that delays their application an additional 2 months until there's a following planning and zoning. So it really.
I know there's
depends.
a lot of variability in it, but now that we are branching off and saying, hey, these are easier reviews, and then we are creating different applications for the tougher reviews, I would like the manager to probably look into a work with Laserbia and figure out if we can come up with like an average time. So the one thing that I do get back from persons who are seeking to interact with us in this way is that they have to wait a really long time to get their permits or have things resolved. So if we could put out just like an average time that it should take, even if it's not for the consumer, but just for us to make sure that we're working efficiently, I think that this might be a natural time to kind of start keeping track of that metric, just so that we can, for our own benefit, know whether or not we're, performing.
And can I add to
Well,
that too?
sure.
Councilperson Martin, thank you. Yes, that's a plan, and I will look into that. This streamlining of the application was so important. We missed so many markers as well as fees needing to be paid. I mean, we stuck our village clerk with a lot of these advertisement fees when they really should have been on the user. But we're streamlining and making these processes a lot easier and user-friendly. We're also, as you know, going paperless as much as we can. This is going to help. And this will also assist us with the time in processing the permits. Now, the permits, you may be getting complaints about them taking so long. It's also building permits. And according to the New Florida law, we have to process a permit within 30 days, or then we are penalized by 35% of those permitting fees. So that's another reason why we wanted to go paperless, and so that we can streamline all of this and all of these processes. So I will track these more detailed, such as the variances and the site plan reviews per your request, because I think that's important as well. But we'll have the capability to do so now that we're going more paperless and relying on technology.
Well, I'd like to hear it, Madam Manager. Thank you so much. Does anyone else on the council have a comment or question? Councilman Urban?
I'm not sure if it's a comment or a question. We'll find out here. But in reviewing this process, everything looked logical and reasonable. My only concern would be if we create something so efficient that things move through the process without being able to properly vet different applications. And so I imagine you're going to tell me that you considered that in your calculation for redesigning, segmenting these applications. And so was that considered in terms of if we make it, everyone worships efficiency, but my concern is that if we create a pipeline that's so efficient that something will be built already before we're finding out that something should have been changed, disallowed, or otherwise augmented.
Yes, we can understand that. I would say that this is an effort to streamline the application process in terms of where to go, where to submit, how to collect the fees, including the advertising and everything that has to go in between public hearings, but without shortening or sacrificing the review time. And even that the charter allows up to 10 days for the planning and zoning consultant to review each of the applications that require council approval. And so definitely this effort will not take away from that effort to properly review them. Thank you, yeah. Thank you, Councilman.
All right, does anyone else have a question, comment? All right, hearing none, can I get a motion to move this item to the full council?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second that, Madam Chair.
All right, Madam Village Clerk, I have roll call, please.
Roll call. Member Lightfoot Ward?
Yes.
Member Perella?
Yes.
Member Erbaum?
Yes.
Vice Chair Nickerson?
Yes.
Chair Martin?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Awesome. All right, so the next two items, I will hand it over to the mayor to guide us through.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Michelle, if you want to come up also. Yeah. So for this right here, you guys, the first one is signage within the business corridors. This is something that I'm trying to see where the council, where the committee first, and then, later on, maybe the council wants to go. I had a meeting with not only Preservia was on there, the village manager was on there, Attorney Geller was on there, our code enforcement officer, Ms. Sherriar, was on there. So we had an in-depth and a delightful debate of a meeting we had one day recently. And so we covered two things, and they're F3 and F4. And F3 was signage in the business corridors. So what we were talking about, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up was because you have, certain type of signage that's allowed in our residential corridors. Where we're talking about size and everything like that. And then the business corridors, I wanted to address how the committee feels about how signage should look in the business corridors and how that should differentiate from the residential corridors and the details of how it should differentiate, size-wise and things like that. So when we were going through this, and Michelle, I'm going to call you in a second. We were going through this, and Michelle, if you notice, she sent out a couple of attachments for this, where she sent out, she took great pictures throughout the community and along our business corridor as far as what's allowed currently. And then when you hear what's allowed currently, how do you guys feel about any adjustment to that, if any adjustment at all? The reason why this is not coming to a vote tonight to be moved to full council is because coming out of that meeting, Preservia, our designers, our planners, we couldn't come to a direct conclusion, and we kind of left it out there where also being addressed or needed to be addressed was the not only the size of signs in the business corridor, but actually, colors that are going to be allowed, lighting that's going to be allowed, like for example, like, are we going to allow like neon signs or just things like that? So we want to take care of all those aspects of details of signage in the business corridor. Preservia is going to put together a comprehensive kind of like landscape as far as details, and we'll vote those up or down, and we'll take out what we want to take out, we'll adjust it how we want to adjust it, but they're going to lay that out. So hopefully by the next committee meeting, we'll have that. But this is the beginning of that conversation to kind of open that up, so you guys start to try to think about what you want as far as signage in our business corridor. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Okay, so
What's that?
at the moment, for the business signs, we have
Point of order.
standard
Yes.
standard sizes.
State your name for the record.
Oh, Michelle Shayar, Code Enforcement Officer for El Portal. Okay, so for the real estate signs, this is along Northeast 2nd Avenue, and our standard size at the moment is 120 square inches. So this right here is one of the signs, one of the real estate signs that's on Northeast 2nd Avenue, and the height of the post is 4 feet. So that's the tallest the post can be. This one is smaller than 120 square inches. So 120 square inches is about 10 by 12, right? So this is 8 by 10, so it's a little larger than this. So that seems like a good size, considering, I think, we're a charming little village, so we want to keep that kind of quaint, cute appeal, as opposed to having a huge industrial size sign. And for the business district, those signs, from what I've seen, because that has to go through the building department for approval. So the tallest post that we have is 6.5 feet for the post. So, like this one is 6.5 feet, and this one is 4.5 feet. So that's the highest that we have so far, and I think that also, it's not too big, and for a small village like ours, I think it's very keeping with that cute, quaint, not too ostentatious look. And then for the signs is pretty much standard. It's 2 feet by 4.5 feet. So 2 feet is the height here, and then the width is 4.5. And for the cottages, that one's the same. So it's 2 feet by 4.5. And this one is 2 for the height and 5 feet for the width. And then the post is 6.5 feet. Okay. And I don't think that we should go any larger, my opinion, than what we have now, 120 square inches, because anything tall, anything bigger would give us more of an industrial look.
Okay, so, Mr. Mayor, what we're doing today is just kind of giving our input on where we would like this thing to go.
Yeah.
I agree that I wouldn't want any sign that's too large, or you're gonna have to wait until you come up to the podium. And I completely understand that, but there's just a procedure to this thing. Once we finish discussing, I'll open it up to you, and then you can step to the podium, give us your name and your address, and you can say exactly how ridiculous you believe it to be. So what I was saying prior is I agree with that. I would want the sign to be small. And I do think that we need to stay away from neon signs or anything that is going to change the existing characteristics of the village. Signage is a very important part of branding, and what we want to do is be consistent with what we are trying to project in El Portal. So with that being said, I'll open it up to, I think Councilman Perrella has something to say.
Yeah, no, I share the same feelings. I mean, if it's now, are we talking about two things here? Is the real estate signs, residential, commercial? We're talking about commercial properties, signage. All that it is right now is perfect, and there's nothing wrong with it. I wouldn't want to go with anything bigger than that. Now, if it's for commercial, in Northeast 2nd Avenue, for example, this is the only commercial area we have, those signs, the residential signs, are way too small for a commercial property to be advertised. I agree with that. Now, a humongous sign, it's not also a good, it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't go with what we, what the village is and what we all, trying to accomplish here. But, yes. If it's for commercial that we have to, make some changes in that aspect.
I see your point. Does anyone else on the council have a comment? Councilwoman Lightfoot Ward.
Our charter.
Charter,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And the last time we changed the sign was what year?
1965.
Well, let me give you a simpler question.
Early 2000?
2000, okay. And they were changed because they were too large. Memory serves me. They were too large. Being that the case, we have lived now from 2002 to almost is going to be 2022, which is 20 years. We are looking at signs today because they weren't being done properly or because we need them to be done properly. These basic questions. Why is it even before us?
It's, if I may, Chairperson Martin.
You may, go ahead.
It's before us because, now that we're starting to get more businesses coming into El Portal, we're starting to get a lot of questions about, just how a lot of businesses are looking into what they consider like modernizing what El Portal currently has in place. You can look at the heads going up and down out there as I'm saying this. We have businesses that are looking into modernizing what El Portal currently has in place as far as how signage has changed over the years. I'm bringing this to us as a committee and then the council to see what it is that we want to do. If we decide to, as a committee, if we decide through the votes to do nothing at all and don't want to change anything at all, fine. But at least I'm going to come and address it, so that nobody can never say, as we're going through these changes and it's been so long, that it at least never was brought up to be addressed.
Okay.
So
That is why I question the head shakes out in the audience. If there is simply us wanting to maintain standards, then I didn't hear that. If there is because the last sign that we actually had was somewhere on Northeast 2nd Avenue, and it was on a dentist building, and they haven't been back yet, so I'm waiting to see what they're going to do. But to become junky, I don't think that's what we want. That's not what I heard. But visibility, we do want visibility for the commercial structures. We really do want visibility. But we don't want the outlandish stuff so that we look like some territorial thing out in the desert trying to get people straight up to Las Vegas because they got all these signs out there telling you Las Vegas is this way or wherever, where the gambling people are. So that's my balance, that we don't want them too little and yet not big enough and yet too big that it's junky. We are a village of manager, I can't ever remember. We are 2 point what? Mayor, how big are we?
2,400.
2,400 people. But the village is no more than
1 square mile, I think, right?
1 square mile.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. We're only 1 square mile, so I don't know what the objection is when you're only a city of 1 square mile.
I want to put a sign that's 8 by 10.
You
so
don't
it's
want an
bigger
8 by
than
10 in a
residential
little bitty.
property.
No.
Definitely.
Especially if I've got residential property in the area. How you like your neighbor to put a big old sign in the middle of their yard and your house is next to it? That's not curb appeal. And I do live on a curb.
That
And I
makes
have
sense.
had signs up. And I'm not afraid to tell you all, I have had signs up, and they pulled them down. The neighbors pulled them down. Too big, Doc, what's wrong with you? But lessons learned. I've been here over 30 years. Give me 2 more years, I'll be here 30 years. So I understand they just came and ripped them down. Okay, all right, I yield. I'm not going to fight people if it's going to be that troublesome to folks. And I don't want people fighting. I want us to understand we're still a village. We are never going to be the city of El Portal. We're going to always be a village because we're so small and quaint.
All right, understood. Do you have a comment, Councilman Arbom?
Yes, I'll try and keep it on track with the business corridor aspect of this. To clarify, really what we're talking about in terms of a real estate sign is a temporary sign, and the guidelines that go
Yes.
along with a temporary sign, meaning it needs to be small, right?
Right.
And then, was that correct, that for a business's sign currently, the limit is, in terms of area, is 2 feet by 4.5 feet for the actual sign?
It's the average size.
It's the average size.
And
Do we have a limit, though?
well, we don't have anything specifically in the code that I saw, do we? Because that has to go through the building department for approval.
Okay, but you found that the average size is 2
Yeah,
feet by
mhm.
4.5 feet.
Right.
With
And the post
with the
is
post of
6.5,
feet.
the highest.
So I saw the one picture, the photo you had submitted of a post that was 8 feet tall. Looks like they're getting ready to put the sign up.
That one is not in compliance.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And then just to add to the discussion in terms of lighting, I think I agree that there should probably be no directly neon signs, for example, but I would hope that we would allow other lighting, including backlighting, indirect lighting, like landscape type lighting that features the sign, I certainly would think should be allowed, but I think I would agree with there not being any like neon signs, for example. And then in addition to that, the sidetrack I wanted to take was, if we're talking about putting signs throughout the neighborhood in individual residence yards, so this is outside the business corridor, right? To the effect of traffic calming, a message, we're in discussion with a uniform messaging system, so we could have uniformity of signs
Right.
throughout the village to hopefully more effectively, get people's attention in terms of traffic calming. It's my understanding that we may need to adjust the code to allow for that, because as it stands right now, if someone wants to just put a temporary sign in their yard with just a random message, say like a random positive message, hello, how are you, or, good morning, any type of random message on a temporary sign, is that currently allowed under this real estate guideline in terms of a small sign for 6 months at a time, I believe it is?
Well, that has to be approved by the council. So any sign in the village has to be approved either by building or the council.
But currently, a real estate agent,
Okay.
okay, but
But those are, so temporary signs such as those are prohibited.
Okay.
Because, I don't have the list, but banners and, do you have the list? I don't have the list.
There are specific guidelines as to which temporary signs are permitted. Currently, the code says that they're allowed for 6 months by approval, with approval by the village clerk. But they all have to, that size currently is 120 square inches for non-residential areas, but for residential, the code currently allows a bigger size. So this is
Okay.
why we want to address
okay.
all of these issues.
So then I think then we probably will need to have a discussion about ordinance to specifically address the desire of the village to allow for traffic calming messaging signs to be placed. I think that would give us teeth with the county so that they may not disrupt what we're trying to do with that along the county roads. And then also just so that there's no confusion or unequal application of the code, because I think we're at the point now where we have quotes and we're essentially ready to move and do that sign program to see if we can help with traffic calming regarding that. But I'm seeing that we may have an issue with the current code on that.
So in response to your question, actually, it's the portable signs that are not permitted. So the signs that would say, have a happy day, drive safely, something like that would be a portable sign.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be different. I also want to this is a personal experience, but I want to caution us on making it too easy for folks to put up any sign that they want, because we have a neighbor on our block that put up a pretty offensive sign that has been up for a while. I think you were able
Yes.
to, exactly. So we want to be careful as to how we craft that. I am all about property rights, and I think by far and large, you should be able to do what you want to do on this property that you've purchased, but I do think that there is something there that needs to be regulated to make sure that whatever signs are put up are not something that ends up, first of all, decreasing the appeal of our community, and also impacting the unity in our community. So with that being said, I think I'll kick it over to Mr. Mayor. I think you had a comment. Councilman Arbol?
I'll just, with finality to my comments, Attorney Geller, because of that discussion of, okay, so we changed the ordinance to allow temporary portable signs, specifically because we're looking to place signs that say, slow down, you took the scenic route, right? And so in that regard, I feel like we need some specific language to those portable signs for the purpose of traffic calming as a way to segment that out from just portable sign with random message A, random message B on it, right? I would leave it to you to say if that's really all necessary or not, but I have two concerns. One is that we start issuing signs that the village produces to residents for the purpose of traffic calming, and then there is some unequal application of who could have a portable sign in their yard and who couldn't because of, someone with a personal message, right, versus someone with the sign for traffic calming acquired through the village. The other concern I have is that the county actually, like we put up the signs along 87th, for example, to help with traffic calming, and the county says, no, they all have to go. So those are my two concerns about what we're trying to get done specifically with portable signs for traffic calming. I will wait for an answer to the next committee meeting, so to not take time from the business corridor discussion that we're having, so.
Well, just off the top of my head, and I can get you a better answer, but it does not seem to me that that's a serious concern, because if we were authorizing individual residents of the village to make up their own signs and put up anything they wanted for traffic calming, I have a concern with that as well, if everybody could just do their own. But where they're generated, created by the village for purposes of traffic calming, traffic enforcement, basically, if the village creates them and distributes them and says, if you want to put one of these in your yard, we'll permit that, I don't see that as giving anybody any advantage that they can do whatever they want to, because it's a village sign. Could the county come in? I suppose if we did it on, what's definitely a county road, something like Northeast Second Avenue that's a main thoroughfare, even though it was well-intended, if they felt that that was actually a dangerous situation, the way we put them might interfere with traffic flow, lead to accidents, that's possible. But on something like Northeast 87th Street, where it's basically, I'm not sure of the ownership of 87th Street, but it's not an arterial thoroughfare, it's basically an interior street of the village. It's not impossible that they could say, please move them, but there's not a tremendous downside. I can't imagine. They're not going to come in and say, oh, and we're going to fine you. And, if they objected to it, if it came to that, I guess we could remove them. But I basically find that pretty unlikely unless we're dealing with something that's arterial. These are village signs, so that's the distinction. That's very different than saying to anybody, do anything you want to.
Well, that was a necessary part of it. It's good to know that whatever the wording will be, it will be signs that are issued by the village. Mr. Mayor, I do believe you had a comment, and then we'll go ahead and open it up to the public for comments.
Yeah, I just want to say, and I know before we open it up, Madam Chair, that I think that we've given Placerbia a good start as far as to put that legislation together. We're going to tackle all these type of things. I mean, there's also the question about temporary signs as far as grand openings, because you have to picture one day you want Northeast Second to look like how Miami Shores downtown looks. We want that to connect. And so, when something's just opening, are we going to allow grand opening signs? How large are the grand opening signs going to be? Will they only be up for a week or 2 weeks? And if that's the case, we want people to be able to bring business in right away, so maybe they'll be a little bit larger than others. So all these type of things, as I said, I think we've talked enough to where Placerbia has, they have direction to start to put this together, which is what I wanted to get out of tonight, which is good. And so I just think that's it before Madam Chair turns it over and it opens up to the public. But thank you, Madam Chair, appreciate it.
All right, no, thank you for kind of summing that up for us. Now we'll go ahead and take comments from the public. If you would like to speak on this item about your feelings about these signs, we would love to hear it. You can step up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Any comments?
Is this only in relation to the sign issue?
You can speak on the sign, but then I'll open it back up on the following item as well. But you can talk about whatever occurred previous if you have another comment.
No, I would like to comment on a situation that's happening with my property.
Okay.
So I can wait.
Okay, that might be more appropriate for good and welfare at the end? Okay, sounds good. So I think I'm hearing that there are no comments on this item from, you would like, there you go. Step on up and give us your name and address.
My name is Olga Gonzalez. This is the second time. I own the property on the corner of 87th Street, Northeast 2nd Avenue, which, as far as I'm concerned, when I purchased that property, that is a commercial piece of property, zoned for. I've obliged to everything that the village has asked me to do. I went ahead and painted the exterior of the building. I restuccoed it. I fixed everything that they asked me to do. And I was in the process of selling that property along with my neighbor, who is the owner of Citadel. My broker is here. His name is Andy Sherry. He works for Metro One. He went into the village. He applied for the application that needs to be completed in order to put up the sign. They went ahead and filled it out. He paid the fee. He went ahead and purchased, and he went ahead and contracted a sign company to do the sign. He spent $400. Once it was put up, they told him it was too big. So that's why I'm here. I have no problems whatsoever, but I think as a commercial property, 10 by 12 inches is totally mind-boggling. If it's a commercial property, it's 120 inches. So I started asking questions. I went ahead and took pictures of all the other businesses, and now it comes down to the bottom line that if it's because it's a real estate sign, it cannot be more than 120 inches. And evidently, things have changed because that was rezoned commercial, and I guess the signage was not changed. The zoning for the signage along the commercial strip was not changed. Now, the other thing that I'm seeing here is, I understand this is a village, it's not a city, but if we want to increase businesses along Northeast 2nd Avenue and connect downtown Little Haiti with Miami Shores, then things need to be a little bit more relaxed, because otherwise it's never going to happen. I mean, if you look at the church across the street, they have big plans, and I know they had a sign there for many years that was a lot larger than 120 inches. But, you know, if we want to do that, if we want to connect both Miami Shores and, Little Haiti, downtown, then things need to be a little bit more relaxed. I mean, I'm willing to work, but you got to, give me the opportunity. I'm even thinking of not selling the property and opening up a business there. But when I said that, they said, oh, it takes two months to get a commercial sign approved. 2 months. So I feel that the village is not enticing commercial properties to go along Northeast 2nd Avenue. And I would like my broker, if he can come up here and talk about it as well, because he went and did everything according to what he was supposed to do, and then why would he spend $400 putting up a sign that he knew was not going to be approved? Doesn't make any sense.
Can I ask you a question? The sign that wasn't approved, it's zoned commercial, but you're referring to a duplex? I remember from your previous comment. Is the property duplex currently used for?
Yeah, but it's zoned for.
No, I just wanted to wrap my mind around exactly what the sign was for, because I can understand how that would be frustrating. The sign is just the advertisement for your building.
Yeah, I was in the process of selling the property.
Oh, okay.
Along with my neighbor next door.
So it's a real estate sign.
Right.
Okay.
So it was a real estate sign, but it was professionally done. Andy, why don't you come up here and...
Madam Chair, if I may for a second?
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
I have a question. When she applied, when you applied for the sign, on the application, does it talk about if it was a real estate sign, and did it like list the size? Like do we know that going into it?
No, there wasn't any process or anything.
Come.
step up to the podium and state your name and address as well.
Answer that question. So whenever anybody applies for or installs a real estate sign, in order to install it, they have to come to the village hall and they have to apply for a permit. So every time they apply for a permit, they have to fill out an application and they have to usually speak with Jonathan, who's the building clerk, and he lets them know the largest the sign can be is 10 by 12 inches, which is 120 square inches. And actually, when they came to the office, they filled out the application, and on that application, somebody wrote down 10 by 12 inches. And Jonathan actually showed them the size, the largest it could be. But when they left the building, they installed a sign that was, I believe, 10 by 12, or something like that, feet, which was a lot bigger.
No. So that's completely incorrect.
Name and address for the record, please.
So my name is Andy Chari. I'm the broker for Olga Gonzalez and to the neighbor to the north, which is 8720 Northeast 2nd. I guess I want to make some comments on signs in general, but specific also to real estate signs, but then I'll answer or I'll give a retort to what the code enforcement said. When I went to go apply for the permit, there wasn't any real communication as to, the process or the size of the poles. The size of the sign was communicated, but it was just a general 10 by 12 or 10 by 20. Never mind, that I imagine that it was 10 by 12 inches, which is, I understand for a residential property, keep it something that's not a monstrosity in terms of a size, size of a sign, that I understand. In a residential district, completely understand. But if it's a commercial property, 10 by 12, especially on a heavily trafficked, a car area or, street, you can't read that. And you're actually encouraging accidents and improper driving because people are going to stop and then they're going to either try to take a picture or read the sign, which they can't, So it's actually counterproductive to have a sign that size. It's also counterproductive for businesses, whether it's a business sign, whether it's a real estate sign, because it defeats the purpose by having a sign if it can't be communicated with people. And I guess now I kind of want to make some comments in general about signs. Again, I understand if it's a residential area or district, a residential sign is proper. But a commercial sign, it's completely different dynamics. You want to encourage investment. You want to encourage the investment community, which the investment community and real estate community is very, very small. As soon as a municipality gets a bad reputation, nobody wants to then invest in that municipality, city, village. You talked about cute and quaint.
Yes.
Can we give him 3 more minutes? We just ran out of time. I want to hear everything you said.
Of course, Councilperson Lightfoot Ward, yes.
So cute and quaint is great. There's other areas that are cute and quaint, and I put that under quotes because this is what was constantly, mentioned. Ball Harbor is cute and quaint, but they don't have any restrictions on 10 by 12 signs. They're doing great. And I can go on and on and on about other cute and quaint municipalities and villages and cities. It's a stifling ordinance, also specifically for business signs. If you're going to limit that sort of, if you're going to limit size for signage, you're essentially placing obstacles to business and to the business community, and that is another way of pushing away the business community. You want to connect, what's going on in Miami, just south of the river, and what's going on, traditionally in Miami Shores. Well, you got to adapt to times. It's not about allowing, this like you said, neon signs and monstrosity, and that's hyperbole to the other extreme, And by the way, my sign was not 10 by 12 or 20 feet. It was actually 8 by 7 because I continuously heard this, and there was a lot of miscommunication in the sense that it wasn't really communicated properly to me that it was inches and not feet.
So, excuse me, so you misunderstood?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what we're here.
Just let me just, if he would have known it was 10 inches by 12, why would he spend $400 in getting it
No,
professionally
exactly.
done.
It was because he was, he
Doesn't make any sense.
misunderstood.
I could definitely see how this is frustrating to you. And I would definitely encourage you to get with Ms. Can you pronounce your last name for me? Because I don't want to, butcher it. Sheriar.
I believe that's the application, and unfortunately, he didn't make a photo or took a copy of it. To me, that has no meaning whatsoever.
No,
I think we need to be very straightforward and honest, because that kind of pisses me off, honestly. If he would have known it was 10 by 12 inches, he would have gone and spent $400 on a sign.
I completely get how that can be frustrating. And I want to encourage you in that we hear you and that we understand. I understand what you were saying as far as the differences in the needs of residential versus commercial. And I think the information that you've given us has armed us with some really good info for the next meeting when we do discuss a meatier analysis of our signage.
And I kind of wanted to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so with that being said, I'm going to give you another opportunity to say what you wanted to say. I would encourage you to continue the conversation to resolve this issue, and then we'd have to move on to the next item.
And I wanted to just build on the comment of grand opening, is actually I thought about that same example for like a business. If it takes 2 months to have that sort of, bureaucratic and go through that process, again, you're just stifling, business and the business community. I don't see how that's productive.
We completely hear you, and I think everything we've been doing tonight, in addition to streamlining the building permit process, is to get us to the level where we are attractive to businesses while still maintaining the character in El Portal. So we're trying to walk a tight line. The information you've given us tonight and highlighting the issue that you experienced gives us some more information so we know how to move forward. I do apologize that was your experience, but I want to encourage you that it wasn't for naught. Like, we hear you, and when we get together, I do want to see a comprehensive signage plan that incorporates all of these elements, because we don't only want to be attractive to the residential aspect, we do have plans to grow in the future. So I thank you for coming out tonight.
Before you end, may I?
Okay, and I'll hand it over to Councilman Life Award, and then after that, we'll slide on over to F4. There you go.
I feel your pain. $400 is nothing to not feel your pain. We have what is known as a variance. And I didn't hear that mentioned at all. This is the option when you want to do something before you do it. We try to tell people to come and ask for a variance, because I think that would have been brought up. And we have a very fair chair over this committee. With the variance, we would have all known before you spent any money whatsoever what you wanted to do and why. So it's not like we're so bureaucratic, and none of us are 1983. We're all 2023 thinking people. And I'm probably the oldest person on this dais, but we hear you. Anytime, anywhere, come to us about a variance before you spend any money. I heard you, 10 by whatever, and you built an 8 by 7, cost you $400 some odd. But had that not happened and the discussion was made when you were applying, I need to do a variance then. And we may have been able to save you that cost, because then you would have perhaps exceeded and gotten that sign up without
Sure.
any problem.
I mean,
What's the property address, by the way?
it's 8700, it's actually between 8700 and 8720 Northeast 2nd.
Okay, Northeast
I'm
2nd
looking
Avenue.
at it in my mind.
Okay.
And by the way, as soon as we were told to bring it down, the sign, we brought it down. No.
We understand that you're definitely trying to.
No, the poles are left, and I said to the code enforcement officer, the poles are left because I'm thinking of opening up a business, and I'm gonna use that, and they're telling me that I have to bring down the poles too.
You do. Well, come on back to the variance.
Let's
Okay, can we ask for a variance now?
Let's take a deeper, we would need to go through some sort of formal process. So this is what we should do. I encourage the code officer and the village manager to work with you guys to give you all of the information that you need about this issue in a more appropriate forum for now. So I have the address. I personally will follow up with the village manager to see what the resolution is, because we don't want you to feel like you're out here just kind of chasing your tail and, who knows what the whim of the council will be. So I will follow up with you personally, but we will go ahead and move on to item F4 now. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you for your
tonight.
time.
We
Thank you,
appreciate
Council.
you. And
Thank
thank you
Mayor.
for, being in the village. Councilman Erbaum.
Just make one short comment for the benefit of public information. So, we had a, Pluserbia can attest this, we had a town hall for fence ordinances that were recently redone. So just for the public's benefit to understand that since El Portal started contracting with Pluserbia, it had been since about 1984 since the code had really been looked at and examined. So now it's just a few years that we're into a contract with Pluserbia Urban Planners, who have been absolutely amazing so far. So the entire code is in the process right now of being examined and looked at, which is why this item's on here tonight, because signage is now bubbled to the top of needing to be paid attention to. So I would say maybe, Camila, it might be, a similar process to how fences were handled might be something that we look at to address what the residents are comfortable with, want, desire, don't want, et cetera. With signage, we might I know it's a process and it takes time, but I know with the fence ordinance, we came out with something we're very happy with. The residents understand it, it fixed all of those issues with the fence ordinances being vague, unequally, assigned, and so that really cleared everything up for the fences. We may be in a similar situation with signage, but just for the benefit of the public to know that this sticky discussion is part of an ongoing effort to really go through the code and bring it into the modern era. So this is what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Councilman Erbaum. Mr. Mayor?
Just to sum this up, I just want to say really quickly, Madam Chair, something that we might want to consider as a village. Once Pluserbia puts this together, and they're going to bring it back to the next committee meeting, and we vote on the details of what we're going to allow, what we're not going to allow, we might want to make separate applications. So for example, like application for real estate signs, and then we want to put on here big and bold, whatever the size limit that we decide on coming down the line, so it's big and bold. So if somebody comes in for a real estate sign in the business corridor, there's a paper for real estate signs in the business corridor. If somebody comes for a grand opening sign in the business corridor, there's a paper for a grand opening sign in the business corridor. And then whatever we decide that comes out of what Pluserbia's plan is the limit. We put the limit on there, big, bold, so that it can't be missed. Once somebody comes in, if they want something over the limit, they know they have to go for a variance.
I think that makes too much sense. There definitely shouldn't be any guesswork, and things like what happened to you definitely shouldn't happen. So with that being said, I think we have really taken a deep dive into signage within the business corridors, and hopefully Pluserbia will give us something back that is at least satisfactory, and we can continue to fine tune it to make sure everyone's satisfied. We'll go ahead and, because this was just a discussion item, we'll move on to F4, short-term rentals, hotels and motels and apartments. And Mr. Mayor, this is another one of your riveting items, so I'll let you take the floor.
Madam Chair, yes, it's not only mine. I know that you're very passionate about this also, Madam Chair, and also Councilperson Barella, also Councilperson Lightfoot Ward. It seems like all of us, also Vice Mayor Erbaum. So I'm not even going to speak too long, because you guys might have great ideas also that can come up. But I brought this up to do the same exact theme that we're doing for the signage. With this, as far as like what the state allows, and Attorney Geller will tell you what the state allows, and we can't supersede the state and not allow individuals to have Airbnb. But I did want to bring this up because, one of the questions I had was the difference between an Airbnb versus a hotel or motel. Because an Airbnb you can stay in for one night, a hotel or motel you can stay in for one night. An Airbnb you can stay in for 2 nights, a hotel or motel. So differences there. differences between like the way a hotel motel is set up compared to where houses are set up as far as Airbnb goes? Are we going to do a difference there? Are we going to, have a fee that's one way on one side or a fee that's one way on another side? So all those type of things, like I said, in the same way that the survey's going to put together the signage and we're going to go through it, we're going to vote on it, we're going to take out details, put in details the way we want it, so we shape it, is the same reason why we're bringing up short-term rentals here tonight. That's all I got to say about the subject, Madam Chair. The floor is yours.
Does anyone else have a comment on Airbnbs or item F4, short-term rentals, hotels, motels, apartments? I will say that I'll just say what I think. I do think that we need some sort of registration process and renewal fee. I would do something similar to what is being done in Miami Shores. I think that's reasonable. I think that it would be a great revenue generator for the city, but in addition to that, it would allow us to better keep track of these Airbnbs. There's an Airbnb on my block that ended up shooting, I think it was a commercial or a complete episode of some show on our block, which definitively is not a residential purpose. I don't think they had a special permit. I don't think any of those things happened. So I do think it is something, and our village is very attractive to Airbnb residents. I see tons of listings all the time on Airbnb and VRBO, and I do think it behooves us to not only keep track of them, but also register them so that it's a benefit to the villagers as well. So that's my thought on it. Does anyone else, I think Councilman Erbaum had a comment?
Yes, but if someone else has comments, I can wait.
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, so as discussed in previous meetings, at a minimum registration fee, so that essentially safety inspections could be done, on an annual basis or something to that effect. And as you're speaking to the differences between a hotel motel versus a short-term rental at a residential property, a hotel motel essentially is within an area that is zoned to account for the impact and things like this. Residential area is not designed to account for those impacts. I know we've discussed before having separate permits for video production and within the village. This highlights the need for something like that because we are, with average 1950 construction, anybody shooting any type of a period piece, we become essentially one of the best candidates in the area. And that, I think that's kind of what we see in terms of the types of productions that come in, is they're looking for access to that mid-century modern architecture, more or less. The point being that with short-term rentals, at a minimum, a registration fee should be required so that we could understand that property should be inspected for safety purposes. And I know the business license also, this would be separate from a registry. You'd be registering to do that, but then we'd have the business license as well, similar purposes. The fees do not need to be exorbitant, but there is a genuine need, even for public safety with, Chief Magnuson's not here, but I imagine that he would say that being able to parse that out in terms of data for, calls, things like this would be helpful, certainly over the years as these things increase. So just a reminder that Miami currently has the highest average hotel room rate in North America. So that is Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Miami has the highest average daily rate for hotel room in North America. That is not going to be changing anytime soon. So this is going to become exacerbated. There is already a crushing move towards investment properties for the specific use of short-term rentals. And so this is only going to become more and more pressing as every single day goes on. So,
Mr. Mayor, Madam Chair.
Proceed.
With all due respect, I don't see anything that elaborates upon which direction we're going on this agenda. I don't see anything. I hear, but I don't see anything that shows where we're going. Which
maybe
direction.
maybe the attorney can give us some guidance as to how quickly we could see something.
May I finish, please?
Sure.
And the reason I brought that up is because legislation might be passed already, but what we want to do, we need to think about it. We need to determine what we need to do, what can be done feasibly. I was speaking to some neighbors the other day, and they said if they come into this area, and y'all know where we live at, there's going to be a problem. Already telling me that. And I said, listen, give us time. I mean, we hear you, we know, but give us time to decide how we address state legislation. It was not given to us. We didn't have a warning. We saw it in other neighborhoods. And quite frankly, our village is going to stay a village. But the day that we just simply said, okay, come on, y'all, we got a registration thing for you, come on, sign. No, we're going to do this right. Because our limited force, most of these things don't become active until the wee hours of the night. People parking on your lawn. Miami Shores is a perfect example. They're fighting tooth and nail, and they're just our neighbors against what they didn't think about. We need to think about how we're going to engage this new invasion of small property areas and cities not paying attention. Our big sister brother is Miami Gardens, and they're all over the neighborhood. They're all over the newspapers about what these Airbnbs are doing to their neighborhoods. And so they tried to come to the little cities because they think we're not paying attention. We are paying attention. We're not going to rush this process. We're not going to be in violation of state law. But we are going to plan so they don't violate my corner lot. Big target. Big target. If I said, yeah, y'all come on, rent the place out for a couple of whatever, they'll be there every night. My neighbors would just be furious with me. So I want us to know, no, I want the public to know we're not going to rush this. And thank you all for coming to my residence at 415 Northwest 88th Terrace to express your dislike for the invasion, what they call the invasion of property, the invasion of neighborhoods by Martians. I said, come on, y'all, this is not one of those things, come on. But this is what it's coming out to be. So with that, Madam Chair,
So-
I yield to the city attorney.
Can I say one thing before we yield it? They're already in our neighborhood. So we live 2 blocks away, and there's an
I know.
Airbnb on my block that
You
is
know
a
what I'm
consistent
talking.
usage of Airbnb for rental. The property owner does not live there, and the reason why I know that they were filming a segment of a Food Network TV show is because there were 2 popular rappers on my block. They set up the front yard as it looked like a bar. It was amazing staging, but they also blocked the street for access for strollers and cars, and it was a big inconvenience. So they are already here. And I know that we are preempted from saying that they cannot be here, but we are not preempted from doing some of the things that our neighbors are doing, which is keeping track of them and making sure that the villagers can at least experience some sort of benefit for the inconvenience. And we can do those 2 things simultaneously, keep track of how legislation is going. And if there's a point where they tell us we can't charge a registration fee, then that's what it is. But I think that we can look at what the state is doing while also acting, and I do believe that we need to act sooner rather than later on this one. This is my opinion. So now I'll give it to the attorney and see whether or not he can give us some additional guidance.
Well, there's a couple of issues there, so let me break one out first. There have been various municipalities that have enacted ordinances to deal with filming and TV crews, movie crews, podcasts, anything like that. And if that's something that the council would like to see, then, that's something we can take a look at. We haven't looked at that, at least not that I recall, in at least a number of years. But that's a separate issue, but it's, to my understanding, and again, subject to research, I'm not aware of anything that has preempted the ability, not to prohibit that, because there are some free speech issues with commercial free speech, but to reasonably regulate it. If, as you said, they shut down a street, you can't do that just because you decide to shut down a public street. You may be able to obtain permission from the village, but that would certainly be something that would go to the chief and to the police department, because you don't have the right as a private individual to shut down a public street. So if that's contemplated, that certainly requires at least an application to the village, review by the police department. Presumably, it could be granted under the right circumstances, you know, what street for how long, how can you get around it? I mean, I don't know that you could do that, for instance, on a dead-end street where people would have no way out. But if that's something that the council wants to see, we can take a look at requiring people to obtain some kind of a permit to do filming. And I know other cities have looked at it and enacted it, but I couldn't tell you without researching whether that has been struck down or preempted by the state in some fashion. But I know that's been done, and I think it's something we can do. We have looked, and I want to thank Plus Urbia for their assistance. We've looked at the Miami Shores ordinance. We had a conversation about this at the administrative level. To my eye, just reading through the ordinance, the Miami Shores ordinance looks reasonable. And in terms of the distinction that the mayor is raising, it talks about a fee per bed. So if you are just renting out your, I want to be clear, approved, permitted, and properly zoned guest house, or whatever you want to call it, and that is legitimate for habitation because it went through the appropriate village processes, and it's a one-bed facility, that's one thing. If you're renting out an entire three-bedroom house, that's a different thing. And if you're renting out some larger property, the ordinance appears to me to be designed to take that into account based on how large. I'd have to, again, do more research to see when Miami Shores first enacted that ordinance and see whether it's ever been challenged in court or is new enough that no one has gotten to it yet, and perhaps it is subject to challenge. I'm of the belief that there are some other cities besides our neighboring one, municipalities, excuse me, I don't want to say cities, I get the distinction that has been raised about that. My understanding is others have done it, and it seems like a worthwhile area to pursue. I do agree with what Councilperson Lightfoot Ward said. We don't want to do something precipitous because it, as I've said to you before, it is a lot easier to decide to challenge us than cities with, you know, full-time in-house, you know, 3, 5, or, you know, city of Miami with dozens of in-house attorneys that can defend these things basically at no additional expense. There's certainly an incentive for somebody who's looking to upset that to try to challenge a small city like us, or for that matter, Miami Shores, with contract counsel on the theory that we're possibly, maybe an incorrect theory, but that would be their theory, we're a little less likely to vigorously defend because there's an expense to it. And we certainly want to avoid being placed in that position. But that said, you know, I would think that unless there's some particular impediment, that we can look at the registration ordinance. There's a good model from right next door, and we can proceed with that. The state has been very problematic with this. It's just no other way to say it. The League of Cities has fought for years. This has been going on well over a decade. Every once in a while, there's some progress made, and then another legislature comes along and rolls the whole thing back. Did you have an ordinance before 2011? Are you grandfathered in? You know, you had the city of Miami Beach charging at one point, I think it was $10,000 per night if there was a violation. Their argument was that with some of the high-end rentals that they had, that were being used for filming, by the way, that the prices were so exorbitant that, you know, anything less than that was simply a cost of doing business and wasn't really a deterrent to anyone. But still, that made for, you know, some flashy show at legislative hearings. It's a very big number. And the state legislature and the, I'll say, party in power there determined that they were going to elevate private property rights above the rights of people, just average people living in municipalities who wanted the ability to regulate this. But that was a choice they made. They've outlawed, I would say, most regulation. I don't believe they've outlawed registration. And there are a few things that you are permitted to check. Emergency situations, safety inspections. I may have mentioned this one before, but in particular where there's a pool, you know, to make sure that things like drain covers are there, because you really had some tragic situations where kids with long hair, often girls, but kids with long hair would get their hair pulled in and they couldn't get it out of the drain in time, and people drowned. We have to have the right to enforce that kind of law, things related to fire safety, and also to having some representative of the property that, you know, had a local address and some kind of contact information, not a P.O. box in New Hampshire or something. So there are a few things we can do, but the fact is the state's preempted most of them. My understanding is registration, safety inspections, somebody who's a contact person locally, those things are permitted, but the sheer, I'd rather not have this in my neighborhood, it's not what I planned on when I bought into my single-family residential neighborhood, we simply can't control. And I know people want to, and I want to, and the League of Cities fights on behalf of 400 and something municipalities in the state, but they haven't been hurt. So that's the guidance that I can give you as to the state of the law, and certainly we can look further and will, and are looking at these issues.
I really appreciate that. I definitely would like to get something about that registration fee, since everyone, well, a lot of other municipalities are doing that, and that's probably something I think we can do, but you're the expert. You'll let me know.
And Madam Chair, if I might interrupt, forgive me, but I think the first thing I'm going to do, besides circulate the League of Cities memorandum, which I mentioned to Councilperson Perella, who's been on this issue literally for months. But in addition to circulating that, I'm going to send around the Miami Shores ordinance, so everybody can take a look at it and see what's in it and see what you think, as I continue researching to see if, again, just because somebody has it on the books doesn't mean it's going to stand up in court.
So that's in addition to that. If you can include when it was actually passed,
Exactly.
and also if there were any active lawsuits as a result, or people contesting it, if you could do that for
I'll
us,
try to
that would
find
be
that out.
amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I do believe that, Mr. Mayor, you had a comment.
Just really quickly, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I just wanted to, first of all, give proper credit where it's due. We received the Miami Shores ordinance, and the individual in that meeting that we were all in that brought up the whole idea about the amount of beds, and we could charge per bed of an Airbnb, was our code enforcement officer, Michelle Shariar. She's the one that gave us the Miami Shores ordinance, and she brought up the bed situation and charging per beds, because currently we only look at anything above 3 beds. So, there might be places where like they're only going to Airbnb one room out of their house or something like that. So 1 through 3 beds, we don't even look at. And even with the 4 beds and up that we look at, it's 4 beds and up for a very small, it's like $27 for 4 beds and up or something like that we charge. So we need to look at the per bed, and that Miami Shores ordinance. And I just want to say, I appreciate that she's the one that provided it to all of us when we went to that meeting. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, thank you. Does anyone else have a comment about F4, Councilman Erbaum?
Just briefly, one, it sounds like, I'd be curious to know if as part of the penalty structure would be available to us instead of going to the extreme of $10,000 penalty, because at some point, that's still going to be cost of doing business if the company's large enough. I'd be curious to know if revocation of the registration is an option in terms of one penalty or another. That might be a more equitable route to go. And if it becomes an issue of, okay, well, then give me my registration fee back, I'm saying, okay, fine, here's your registration fee back. You're no longer able to utilize your property. In that regard, I also think ordinances outside of short-term rental specifically, but, noise ordinances, again, just for people who don't know me, I am an anti-authoritarian. I do not like rules, infringement, or otherwise. However, being a purist also comes with its own penalties. So in terms of that give and take, I do think that ordinances in terms of vehicles and swales, noise ordinances, I would love to see a light pollution ordinance. So if someone had set up like an elaborate system in the backyard, for example, with stage lighting that goes until 2 a.m., right? Something like a light pollution ordinance would also be helpful. And so in those events, Officer Shariar would not necessarily be on site because these are usually late at night. However, with those types of ordinances, police officers who might be called to a property would be able to issue citations, according to the code. So, and I also would like to give a shout out to Officer Shariar and remind residents watching at home here with us tonight, the village has largely been without code enforcement for a decade, like 10 to 12 years. The village has largely been without code enforcement in a meaningful way. And before that, the code enforcement officer that was here was very problematic, just for your benefit, in terms of outrageously unequal distribution of citations. As you talk to residents who've been here a long time, that was specifically split along racial lines. And so here we are all these years removed, and we now have a phenomenal, highly productive code enforcement officer, and it's a bit of a shock to the residents. But if you do look through the manager's report from August, I believe, there's 50 notations from our code enforcement officer that our manager typed out, and most of them are verbal citations, like verbal warnings and courtesy citations. So this is not a this is not a heavy-handed application of code enforcement. We're finally in a position where we have a uniform, equitable distribution of citations. So I just do want to say again, thank you to Officer Shariar for her diligence in that, and help residents understand that part of the shock of these citations being issued is that there really has not been meaningful presence for more than a decade. So.
Thank you so much, Councilman Erbaum. Now I'll open it up to the audience. Does anyone have a comment specific to item F4? Remember, we also have another good and welfare coming up. So does anyone have a comment about F4? Okay, hearing none, I will move us on out to good and welfare. I know that I have a comment for good and welfare. Sir, do you want to step up to the podium at this time? State your name and address for the record.
My name is Randy Rosenthal. I'm the owner of property at 8300 Northeast 4th Place. And the reason why I came here tonight is I wanted to make the leadership of our village aware of a problem that I've been having the last 2 months with one of my tenants who I've been evicting. I've called the police out to the property. 14 times. I have cases. This tenant of mine, his name is Nicholas Hakimian. He called me up on the phone on July 27th. He threatened to kill myself and my wife and to destroy all my properties. I have other properties outside of El Portal. And what I really want to express is that the police have come every time, they've taken cases, but they've never interviewed him, they've never spoke to him. He's been empowered, he just keeps destroying my property. He lets the hose bibs run endlessly. I have a $2,000 water bill. He's broken impact glass windows. My property is a 6-unit property. I've lost 2 tenants. I have another tenant who is now parking his truck at my business and rides his bike 3 miles back and forth to commute to the apartment and to his truck. He's broken the windows of one of my tenant's cars. He put sugar in another tenant's oil, which was a $600 repair. He removed all the vent covers from the soffits and then called code enforcement on me, who responded rather quickly, I might add. And here I have a picture of him removing the vent covers from there. He removed 13 vent covers from the soffits and also from the crawl space underneath, and no arrests. This was a roofer I had come make a repair to my roof on July 27th. He broke the back window of the roofer's pickup truck. And the roofer, this Nicholas, he kicked the ladder out from the roof. The roofer heard it. He went over there. He saw him break the back window, and then he carved in his tailgate with a knife the word perro, which means dog. And while he was doing it, he said, "That's nothing compared to what I'm going to do to you, Randy, and my wife Maria there." My kids we're just so disappointed with the law enforcement that this guy has not been arrested. And then recently, he decorated my property. You see that? All that graffiti on half my property. He graffitied the property. Graffitied the property. Okay? All this graffiti.
Do we have a representative from the police department at all?
He even put a note to the police because one of the officers came, he was stealing electricity, he was shorting out the meter can, and so I showed it to I don't want to name any names of the officers, and we called FP&L like 4 or 5 times to get him out there. I said, "Look, it's dangerous, I see it arcing." We couldn't get FP out there. At least he got them out there in 20 minutes. And he had to do it twice because he broke back in. I put 2 heavy locks, the biggest locks I could find at Ace, the heaviest, the biggest chain, the heaviest lock. And he still broke it. And the lady in the property next door to me saw him breaking it. We reported it all to the police, nothing. 12, 13, 14 incidents that we've reported to the police, and we can't get this guy arrested. Also, he is on bond right now for assault with a deadly weapon. And he has a trial December 6th. So I would think the bar to get him arrested would be fairly low at this point, but it doesn't seem to be.
This sounds horrific.
There's specific threats in his graffiti that reference my wife, myself. Here's the oil, the sugar, over a pound of sugar in my resident's car. Not only that, my tenant, his name is Adam Cass, he saw this individual under the hood of his car, and then he said, "Hey, get away there," and he called El Portal out there, and they said, "Oh, well, we don't see any sign of that." They had him start his car up, his car started. He drove 3 blocks, the car started acting erratically, he took it over to Leon's Auto Repair, and the mechanic there immediately identified that it was sugar, and then they dropped the oil pan where you see all that sugar in there. I could go on and on and on, but I just want to say that I can't even go to my own property right now. I can't send any mechanics or subcontractors out to the property for fear of their safety. And I have a feeling if I were in the city of Miami, or if I was still, because my property was annexed by you all in 2014 from Dade County, that this would have been handled differently.
Mr. Rosenfeld, perfect. So I just requested that we have a representative from the police department speak to you about this, because
I've spoken to them till I'm sick and nauseous.
Well, you've spoken to us now, and we're requesting that you speak to the gentleman in the back, and he's right there, and we're here. So if you could step to the back and just speak to him about the issues and show him everything that you have. Your
We've
complete
talked to the
package.
chief, we've talked to the lieutenant, we've talked to two
I
sergeants.
completely understand that, but this is a different setting, correct? Do you agree? Have you spoken to
We'll let
a
him
representative?
come up here and so you all can hear him too.
That's not how it works.
Madam Chair,
So
may I-
we're still,
Point of order.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I-
Chairman is talking.
No, no, she's talking.
hold on one second. Hold on one
Yeah,
second. We're just explaining to you the process. So that's not how it works. It's not just like he comes up and we do this right here. He's in the back, and you can talk to him and give all of the information that you just gave to us, right? You've given us the information, we've heard you, and we want to.
Yeah, please come up.
Oh, I have to recognize you. Hold on one second. We're going to do it sequentially. Mr. Mayor, if you could go ahead.
I would just say, Madam Chair, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would just say that there's things that have just started to be done, implemented about this situation, and we just need to let those things occur. I'm trying carefully not to say things on the record, but we just need to let those things occur. Thank you to not only Chief Magnuson, but Officer Poveda. They've started a process of something for the situation. There's many issues as far as what's been going on, as far as lack of witnesses, as far as no cameras to catch individuals in the act and things like that. That being said, by all means, Madam Chair, we appreciate him coming out and saying this, but there has started to be implementation of a couple of things over the past 36 to 42 hours.
Mayor.
And I'll just leave it there.
And if I might, Madam Chair, let me just say, sir, there's free speech in this city, and you have every right to come and to say what you have to say and to bring it to the attention. We have processes. We have to, consult with our department. The council has heard you, I assure you, and if you want to check back, subsequent to the meeting with the manager, once she's had an opportunity to talk to the chief, glad you came, and glad you have explained this, and if there's somebody else who's going to offer some commentary, that's fine as well, but understand that for legal reasons, the village council cannot get involved in this matter. It's not a matter that the council addresses in a committee meeting, but I assure you, you've been heard loud and clear, and whatever is or was already going on, your comments are noted, and they'll be pursued.
That's all I could ask.
They'll be
I wanted to make
pursued,
everybody
sir.
aware of what's happening in our little village, that we have a destructive meth addict who's been running my property.
Sir, I mean, the gentleman in question is not here.
He's not a gentleman.
Excuse me, sir, but I think I was speaking. The gentleman in question is not here. You're entitled to express your opinion and your view, but it is improper for the village council to weigh in on this, but I assure you, you've been heard. If somebody else is going to be recognized by the chair at the chair's discretion, that's fine too. And your comments are not going into the ether, they're being listened to, and then the
That's all I can
appropriate
ask.
process
That's
will
all
be
I can
followed.
ask.
Thank you.
That's all.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and recognize the young lady in the gray scrubs. If you can state your name and address on the record.
Hi, my name is Maria Rosenthal, 8300 Northeast 4th Place, and Randy's my husband. I just need the city to be aware. I worry about the citizens also. I mentioned to Michelle what happened. She had no idea, and I said, please don't even go by there because I'm fearing for my life. And my husband's fearing, my kids are sleeping in the sofa at our house. Michelle had no idea what happened, and I told her, don't even go by there because it's putting your life in danger. And she works right next to the police. She should have been aware what's going on. And anybody in the city should be aware that this gentleman is, to break a window that's a hurricane proof, 130 miles per hour. One of the tenants heard him beat on the window, but when he came out, he just saw him go out around the building. So the police, at 5 in the morning, the police have tried to address the issue. They have. What they say is, oh, nobody has seen him do anything. So he's quick because he does the damage and gets back into his apartment, and that's it. He's safe haven. And that's the issue. But what if one of our citizens, that's not myself, what if it would have been Michelle? I don't even go, the other day, the day that crime was committed, of him vandalizing the front, which he put a threat, I'm gonna run over your papa on the door, right? And we have a text that has the same language on a text 8 days before, almost the same verbiage, and then he put it all on the building, but they can't do anything. Because they say they didn't see it, but it's almost the same exact verbiage on text as the building. I worry about the citizens of the village of El Portal. What if somebody's walking at 3 in the morning and he decides to hurt that person?
So
it's not just the building, it's not just the property, it's the citizens of the village of El Portal.
I completely understand.
So they need to be aware what's happening.
I completely understand what you're saying, and I think the very first step we've done tonight, which is, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told your husband. This is a different setting.
Right.
I'll echo the attorney in that we have all heard what you said.
But the citizens need to be aware, because if we didn't make them aware, nobody would know. And if anybody walks down that street at 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning, going to work, he could injure somebody.
I hear you completely.
All right.
I hear you completely. And I do believe that the gentleman in the back will be the very first step in a possible resolution for you.
I just want to add one last thing, because you're
So, excuse me. What we're going to do, we heard you, and I want to say that for sure. We have heard you, but what we're saying is you need to go to the back and speak to the officer at the back.
But I want to thank the police officers. They have tried. They just say that no witnesses have seen the person.
We definitely understand.
And I said to them, well, what are they waiting till he finally heard?
We understand.
The problem is that the police have never gone to talk to this person. That's the problem.
I completely hear you.
They didn't.
Mr. Rosenfeld, I hear you. I hear you. Step to the back and speak to the officer.
We wanted to address the citizens of El Portal so they're aware of this area.
And you have.
And be careful.
You have, and we empathize, for sure. Councilman Erbaum?
Yes, so my question might be for the manager or the attorney. And so I've read through all the emails. The emails were forwarded to the council. I've read through them. It was fairly shocking to read about all of this, to be certain. And so what I'm hearing is that the village is saying that there is a response. The resident is saying that they don't see the response. Part of what the village is saying is that we cannot necessarily disclose all the details of their response for for reasons of the different laws.
A
And
little detailed there, Councilman.
so, right, so what I'm asking for is a little, because I
No, I'm
believe,
saying you're being a little, maybe too detailed.
Yeah,
there.
I think.
okay,
There
even
should not
already.
be- that we should not be putting something on the record
Okay.
at a committee meeting.
I think just to put a button
There
on
can be
it.
discussions. Yes.
The attorney has given us some great guidance. We hear you, Mr. and Mrs. Rosenfeld, we hear you. Let's move off of this topic and head on to, are you going to speak on this topic?
No, ma'am.
We're not doing any more conversations about this one.
No, ma'am.
No.
Can I ask a
we're not.
question?
No, ma'am.
Does it have to do with the topic?
No, no.
The police in general or this issue?
I went to an open house on Saturday.
Stand up, come to the podium. She has spoken before. You've spoken before, right?
Yes.
Oh, not on this, okay.
Yes.
So name and address for the
Olga
record.
Gonzalez, 8700 Northeast Second Avenue.
Okay.
On Saturday, this last Saturday, I went to an open house, and I went and spoke to the Realtor. And the Realtor told me that a few minutes before I got there, 2 police officers from El Portal came and knocked on the door to tell him that his real estate sign was not 10 by 12. I was totally in shock. I said, is the police department now supposed to be monitoring sizes of signs? And his sign might have been 12 by 12, not 10 by 12? I was totally in shock. I don't think the police should be doing that. I think the police should be doing that, looking after who's stealing my bike, who's stealing my furniture in my porch, who's going into my backyard. That's what they should be doing, not enforcing sizes of signs. I just
Well,
wanted to leave
excuse
that
me
for
if
the
I
record.
may. Well, the police is code enforcement officer, so they can enforce any code that that
But I
relates
understand.
to anything in the village.
I understand what you're saying. She's saying that as far as like in order of urgency. I do believe that the manager had a comment. Madam Manager, do you have a comment on this? No? Okay. No comment, right, Madam Manager? You're good on this?
No
Okay.
comment.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so that was a very spirited good and welfare. I do believe that we are done for the evening with good and welfare, so our final good and welfare. So I will move on to adjournment, and I will adjourn the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting for Tuesday, September 14th, 2021.
I move to adjourn the.
Excuse me?
I move to adjourn the planning and
Thank
zoning.
you.
Yes.
I was trying to close this thing myself. Do I have the?
What happened?
Do I have a
second.
second? Do I
Madam
have a
Chair,
second on that one?
I'll second it.
Okay, awesome. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes, any opposed, say nay. Okay, great. The meeting is adjourned at 8:33 PM.